Welcome back. I'm Dave Fisher. This is our final Connecting with Code video for 2024. Let Bob introduce himself.
Howdy, Bob Schaefer. We're excited to bring you our fifth and final installment of the 2024 Connecting with Code camp. This game today is going to follow our theme, logic games. If you've been with us for all four previous videos, you've seen Coin Collector, Rock, Paper, Scissors, Tic-Tac-Toe, Linear Lights Out. And if you're doing it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we have got a fun-filled, fantastic Friday for you. This one's a doozy. We are not providing you with any starting code, and there's a lot going on. The game of NIM, picking up sticks, is the traditional way. If you Google NIM, you can see a bunch of different versions of NIM. For this particular version, we're going to have three different types of sticks. We're just picking sprites at random. For us, we picked balloons, rainbows, and unicorns. Very kid-friendly. Hopefully you'll find something that you like just as much. And then these go into groups. Random numbers of these will appear on the three rows. And the game, quite simply, is you click on various items to have them removed. You can only pick one type of item per turn, and it alternates. And I honestly forget if the game is won by taking the last one or not taking the last one, but the player who takes the last object wins. There you go. So your goal is to try to strategize so that you are left with the ability to take away the final item. And if you notice how Dave's playing now, when he clicked on the balloons, it showed that those were about to be the ones that left. But then he changed his mind and he clicked on a unicorn and the X's went away. So the game is set up to follow those rules. So Dave, why don't we tell him how it's going to go?
All right. So player number 2, he's trying to make sure that he gets the last balloon. So he could take all of these, but then that would make the other player win. So he's going to very strategically at this point take 2 balloons and say, your turn. And he says,
player
you
one
dirty
stuck.
rat. And then he gets the last one, and player 2 wins.
Player 2 wins.
The thing that makes this game hard, by the way, is you will figure out when you're destined to lose. Right? Like it's just gonna happen, right? It's like, let's say player 2 is very good and he's just got a strategy. So player 1 might see or might not see that he's in trouble. And then player 2 gets the win here with multiple in the last row, right? But you do have to try to be a good sport, and even if you are about to lose, go ahead and take your turn, and then let it finish up in the other person.
I think when the writing's on the wall, you say good game and limp to the finish.
Yeah. By the way, there's all kinds of strategies for the game of NIM. If you want to get better at them, we'll probably talk about it some. But really, you can look on like Wikipedia. There's certain patterns and things. Like you can see this 1-1 pattern that you want to try to leave and to help yourself win. The strategy, like it's a fun game for a good while, and so it's gonna be.
I personally would invite you to play the game for a bit and see if you can develop your own strategies, and then as you get more involved, maybe rely on some of the deeper strategies that you can find online. But it's a great game, however you approach it.
Cool. So this one, for better or worse, we're not going to give you any starting code. So I'm going to switch who I'm signing in as. Hey, got enough accounts for scratch there, I think. It doesn't matter.
Which one of the 15 of you are you going to be today?
Which person am I today? I'm going to be Fisher DS. That's who I really am. So just go to Scratch and click on Create, because we're going to start from a completely blank canvas. It's going to be a good one. All right, so nothing to do but to start in on it. So we got to start in with a couple of things. The first is you're going to think about 3 images you want. The button we're just going to draw, but only make one of them for right now. And then we're going to do some code on that one before we pick the next one. So the first thing you've got to do is you've got to decide what are your 3 objects going to be. Maybe you've got a theme going on. So Bob and I will probably pick something for this one. I'll tell you what, I'll pick the first one, Bob, and then you get to pick the second and third.
Oh, you don't want to match the solution. We're gonna go rando.
I feel like going rando. Is that okay?
No, totally fine.
Mainly because I feel like having penguins today.
You
All
feel
right,
like having
I'm gonna go with
penguins?
You
All
can,
right.
you can.
So Dave.
Yeah. So I picked the first one. You're gonna pick the second and the third, but not.
All right.
until
Should
we
I
get
bring
to
up
that.
my own scratch over here?
Yeah,
You're
you
gonna
can
bring
think
me up
about it.
and,
You can think about it. You
All
can-
right. I will do that in the background.
I'm also
Thank you
going to make
much.
my penguin just a little smaller. The size you want to make him is to where you could fit maybe like 10 of them across the row, right? You could also think about what backdrop you wanted. When you go to backdrops, there's a number of different backdrops that you can pick. Backdrops, you can actually just click on the circle here right in the corner. Doesn't really matter what you pick. I've still enjoyed this like nebula. No, I can't see it very good. Whatever you wanted. I will say though that it's best. Oh, galaxy, that looks fantastic. It is best though if you can see a difference between like your sprite and the background, because people want to be able to clearly see what you want to do. I'll also say that one thing that can also be handy just in doing the work today is to bring up the grid, if I spelled it correctly. So there's this XY grid, which can be nice. Also, it's important to be able to switch around. So if you click on the stage, so I clicked over here, the stage has backdrops, just like sprites have costumes, and you can actually switch between them pretty easy, right? So I would probably pick one that you like, and then I would probably also pick that XY grid, just because there's going to be a little math today, right? So just to kind of call a cigar, there's going to be a little math. All right, other things that I'm going to want to do. My sprite, my penguin here, has multiple costumes. You can see that that's for games where I kind of animate him. I don't really need multiple costumes today. I'm just going to pick with the one that I like the best. I think I'll just go with that top one. And then I'm just going to delete the others. All right, super. Now the next thing I'm going to do, I'm still just kind of getting my graphics together. Told you, big week. Is you'll notice that in this game, there's this X that goes on top of them. Well, this X is actually just another costume for the sprite. So I actually just put the X like on there, which is kind of neat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to my penguin and I'm going to duplicate my penguin. Now I've got 2 penguin costumes. And the second one, I'm going to put a big old X on. To put an X on it, I just hit T here. I make sure that I'm in what's called the vector mode. This is crazy, but you know you're in the vector mode if you could convert to the bitmap mode. So if it says convert to vector, then click it. But if it says convert to bitmap, then you know you're in good shape. A lot of details there. All right, I'm going to take an X. When you're in vector mode, it's kind of nice because you can resize things and changes. I can't have a purple X. That doesn't make sense. X's have got to be red. There you go, big red X. Great. And so whenever I click on this penguin, he's going to get this X kind of put on him, showing that once you confirm, then that's going to be removed, right? All right, so I've got my penguin. You can do whatever you wanted. And there's 2 versions of it, and you should be able to go back and forth. One version has this giant red X on it. All right, I think we're ready to do a little bit of code. So this code has to make clones of the penguins. And so you've got to decide, well, who's going to make the clones of the penguins? I like to have the parent penguin make all the clones. So I usually use this structure. I say when the green flag is clicked, I'm going to do something. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a bunch of clones of him. And then I've also got another one for cloning. Cloning is actually in control. They do this with cloning to make it easier for you. There's 3 commands related to cloning, and they're all together down here in control. And so I always start like this. I say when I'm clicked, I do one thing, and then when I start as clone, I do another. If you've done enough with me with clones, you'll kind of know that what I do with the main one is I hide him, and then I show the clones. Then what I do is I decide how many clones I want, and I create clones using a loop. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to control. I'm going to start off with a fixed number. Maybe I'll start off with 10's quite a lot. I'll start with 5. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a clone. So the cloning stuff is all together down here. Make a clone of myself. And then I personally like to pause for just a moment before I make the next clone. So I like to put in a short pause of something. I saw the solution recently. It paused for 0.3. Why do I like to do that? I like to do that for a couple reasons. One, it just makes a cool effect. So like when it makes the clones, it kind of like stamps them. It also has a slight code benefit, which I'm not going to go into, but it avoids a race condition to have a little delay there. All right, now when I show them what I want to do, just watch this for a minute. You don't have to do this because I'm going to change it. If I ran it right now, it wouldn't look like much because it would look like they're just all on top of each other. There are actually 5 of them, right? But they're on top of each other. So just really quickly to see it, I'm going to say go to random position, right? And so you can see that this sets them up in random positions. We could play the game like this. Oh, I should probably also switch back to that original costume. I'm going to go to looks, and I'm going to say switch to costume. Oh, these have terrible names. Penguin A and Penguin A2. I'm going to say Penguin A. That's probably going to be enough. Now, this version makes my 5 clones in random positions. Not quite what I want. So what I want to do, if you look at this solution, is I want them to kind of like space themselves out evenly. They're all 60 pixels apart. And I want them to all be in a line. So let's go ahead and think about what we want to do. So not random, that's not what I want to do. I want to go to a specific X and Y. I'm just going to blank these out for right now. And by the way, this is a detail, but I usually show last. Order doesn't matter in those. I just feel like getting it set up and then showing is the best way to do it. So my penguins. My penguins are, well, they're kind of like my balloons up here. They're all going to be the same Y value. So the Y value I can just hard code. I'm just going to hard code it as 60. And then my X value. Well, what do I want to do with my X value? Well, what I really want is I want to start at one spot. So like I'm going to start, just kind of for this first example, I'm going to start at 200. And then I'll put them 60 pixels over, 60 pixels over, so you get the idea, 60, 60, 60, 60. So what X am I going to put them at? This is a little tricky, but what you really need is you need a variable, because this variable is going to be like negative 200, and then it'll be like negative 140, and then it'll be like, you get the idea. So I'm going to need a variable. And I'm going to make this variable in a very special way. So click on Make Variable. You can name this variable, whatever you want. I think I'm just going to call it a very simple single letter X. And this variable X, I want to do special. I want to do it for this sprite only. Now, why do I want to do that? Because each sprite is going to have their own X, and I want them to all be separate. So I'm going to make this new variable X just for me. That way when I make a copy of it, they'll get their own variable X, right? Cool. And you can see that it displays it by default. I will eventually hide it, but to start with, I'm going to show it. All right, so I just want to lay these penguins out. So what I really want to do is I want this variable X. So I'm going to grab this set. By the way, I always dislike this my variable. I'm going to delete my variable. That way it makes these default to all X's. Isn't that fun? So what I'm going to do is at the start, I'm going to set X to a number. I'm just going to do like negative 200 to start with. And then every time I make a clone, I'm going to move the X over by 60. So I'm going to change it by 60. So notice that this one I set it to negative 200, which is just kind of a number right here. And then I make a clone, and then I change it by 60, and then I make another clone. Now the only thing that's missing is I need to actually use the variable over here. So watch what happens. I hit play, stamp, 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 stamp. That was cool. Those look like marching little penguins. I'm going to do that again. So I click it, and you get 5, which is fun. If you change the 5 to an 8, you click it again, you get 8 little penguins, which is neat. So maybe 8's about my max. Now the next thing that I want to do is I want to be sneaky. I want to have if you look at the solution here, it picks a random number. I think it's like 3 to 8. And then it makes that many of them. So you can see I've got num balloons, num rainbows, and num unicorns. We could have called these maybe num of items in row 1, num items in row 2, num items in row 3. But we just kind of did it like this. Num, by the way, is just short, of course, for number. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another variable, which is globally available, to be the number of penguins. So I'm going to click Make a Variable. I'm going to say num penguin. This one I do want for all sprites because there's only one of these in the whole world, right? The number of penguins. So I do want that one to be for all sprites. By the way, you'll notice you can see the difference because it says penguin : X. So that one's specific to the penguin. Whereas num penguins is just globally available. All right, so how are we going to do this? At the start, the same way that we set X, we're going to also set num penguins. We're going to set it to a random number. Bob, do you remember where random number stuff is at?
Random number is in the green section.
Yeah. So let's go to
the
green.
Operators.
There we go.
Yes.
So we want it to be random from, I think we did 3 to 8. I forget. 10.
3 to 8 was in the solution. Yeah, and I was following along here. I've picked my other two sprites when we get to that, but I was also noticing that the penguin was a little off the screen to the right.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm wondering if that was because the balloons and the unicorns and the rainbows we made smaller, or if the image itself wasn't centered. If anybody cares about this, you could go back to costumes and maybe make it a little smaller just to make sure that doesn't happen. You can move that costume over to the left a little bit, make sure they're centered if that's the problem.
I think they might just be a little on the big side, is my guess.
It'd just be a little large. So if you care about that, if you really want everything to fit on the screen, there's a few different solutions. It looks like Dave's solution is going to be simply size those at 65, maybe 60. Depending on what you grab, it's not going to be identical to ours. Or maybe it actually looks like his starting could just maybe start at -210 and scoot everything over just a little bit because they don't look exactly centered. So there's a lot of different ways that you can address this, kind of trial and error and make sure it looks right. And kind of see just as he tweaked that, he adjusted the size from 70 to 65, moved the starting point to -210. And now that row of penguins looks nice and centered. So.
And now that we have it perfect, I'm going to mess it up. So
yep.
I set the number of penguins to a random number. You can see that it got set to like 3. By the way, it's cool. You can see that number increasing there. Here it's 7. We're not using that number yet. So I'm going to go to variables, and I want to use that number right here. Now the thing that will happen now is that it'll pick 5, and then you'll get 5, which is cool. It'll pick, I'll pick 5 again. Here it picked 8, so you get 8. You'll notice that especially if you get a smaller number, sorry, there you go, 3, it is kind of like very left justified. If you care, we're going to show you how to fix it. So totally fine just to make it left justified, just to say, hey, it's 210. But if you care, we'll show you how to do it, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about the formula. So the formula. The formula is simply, there's 60 pixels between all the penguins, right? So if I have 8 penguins, I've got 7 60s. And so I'm just going to kind of build it up. So I know that it's going to involve multiplication. So I grabbed a multiplication thing here. It's going to involve the number 60 times something. The something is going to be the number of items minus 1. So I'm going to need a subtraction. So if you want to do this formula with me, you can. If you don't want to, that's okay. And it's a subtraction of my number of penguins minus 1. So the length of this whole chain of them is the number of penguins minus 1 times 60. That's great. But we don't want to start at like that number, we want to start at half that number. So I'm going to need to divide by 2. Told you it'd get interesting. So I'm going to take, and it's hard to, whenever you move it, you got to move it just right. So I'm going to move it by grabbing the time symbol there. All right, now I've got to remember to grab it by the divide symbol. Now it's not, it's not the positive value that we want to start at, it's the negative value. Now I could stick on a times -1, that would be just fine. But I think the math will work for me if I just stick a negative on the 60. Which is kind of sneaky. All right, now I've got to get rid of that -210. I've got to put this in. I need to grab it by the outermost thing, which for me is the divide symbol here. All right, so we've got this crazy complex formula. If you want to do the crazy complex formula, there it is. You got to be careful that it's done right. So the minus was on the innermost, then the times. It's kind of like if you know how to do parentheses in mathematics. So the minus is on the innermost parentheses, and then the times, and then the division. Technically, the order of the division and times doesn't matter, but that's not a big point. So now it should be centered. So I got 3 on one side, 3 on the other, 4 on one side, 4 on the other, 3. That's neat, right? I just think that's neat. That's cool. All right.
Math is fun.
Math is fun. Math is fun. At least I like it. Things I want to do from here. So my goal is ultimately that I want to get enough done on this penguin that I can make the other rows and I can discover what sprites Bob's picked out for us here, right?
You ready?
Not just yet. I'll do one more thing. I want to at least be able to click it and have it toggle whether it's got the X on it. So that's the last thing I want to do before we see the amazingness. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to go to events. I'm going to grab a when the sprite is clicked. And I'm going to switch to the other costume is really what I'm going to do. And so I'm going to use a, we could just use a next costume, I think. I think we did it different in the solution, but now that I think about it, we could probably just do next costume. We'll see. I might regret that. And so let's go ahead and click on go here. And then whenever I click it, it should switch to the other costume. Great. And I can see that mine jumps just a little bit whenever I click on the costume. That means my penguin wasn't perfectly centered in both of them. I'm not that worried about it, but I guess apparently I am a little worried about it. I made it worse.
Uh-oh.
Shouldn't have messed with it. Oh, it's because of my X. X is causing more problems. Don't be OCD unless you already are, and then you just kind of have to accept it. All right, that's going to be totally better. Yes, see how it doesn't budge? You like it. All right, good deal. Now I think I'm ready to make some additional rows. When you make additional rows, you could, if you wanted, start by just clicking on the button here. That would actually be okay. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually duplicate the penguin. So I'm going to right click on the penguin and say duplicate. And then, I don't know if I want to spoil this. Bob, what name should I use for penguin 2?
What name should you use for the next? Yeah, we can just reveal. Okay. Are you ready? I've picked a dragon.
A dragon?
And a starfish.
All right, and then I'm going to right click on the penguin again and a
starfish.
We don't know.
I almost went bird themed. There was a toucan, a rooster. I tried to maybe follow anything with a beak. I'm not even sure if a penguin is an official bird. I think it is, but it's kind of a weird bird.
It's a weird
flightless bird.
It's a flightless
bird. We didn't have 3 flightless birds, so I just went all over the place. Dragon and starfish.
All right.
Actually, what I went for was when they were much smaller. They were still very distinct colors. So we got a green and a pink coming your way.
Cool. You can start by pausing your video to figure out if penguins are birds or mammals. Penguins are birds. Penguins are birds. All right.
Birds, yeah.
So I have done a thing where I've changed the name of them, but to be honest, I haven't really done much else, right? So for example, their costumes are the same. If I run it, they're just going to show up on top of each other. it's going to kind of be a disaster, right? And so one thing at a time. Ooh, yeah, that's craziness. I think what I want to do first is I want to fix their costumes, so the way they look. And so my dragon, I'm going to click on costumes. And I don't want penguins at all. I actually want to choose a costume here. And I've got a feeling that if I search for dragon, I'll find one of the ones that Bob wants. Bob, which of the dragon costumes are you using?
I just took Dragon A.
Dragon A. Do you like A or do you feel like fire breathing?
Fire breathing's great.
Right,
I just went with the first one of the dragon I picked.
We're going to breathe fire.
And I sized that dragon when you had the penguin at 70. I sized the dragon at 30 to match.
30.
But you tweaked further, so I think you're going to have to either edit that in the actual costume area or bring it down maybe to 20.
It's fun. You can
something
do
in the 25 to 30 range, but
you can do either you want, right? So you can either change the costume or you can change the size over here. It doesn't really matter. I think that I'll change the size over here, but I think I'll try 30 for my dragon because you suggested it. But really what I want to do is I want to have 2 dragons. And I want to have the second dragon with an X on it. I'm just going to copy the X from here and put it right here. Notice how it has to be a little bigger on my dragon.
Yeah, and that's where I was kind of I was having, you mentioned being particular about our details. I was in a little bit of a conundrum. I was stuck in my thinking. I was one way, if you resize the dragon in the costume area to be the right size, you could literally copy and paste the X and you wouldn't have to resize it. And then the X is exactly the same for all 3. I did it a different way. I resized the dragon with the number, keeping the image the bigger size, and then so I had to do what Dave's doing and stretch that X out. So, there's a trial and error with this, but there's also I have to think through the repercussions of certain actions. And now we see the dragons off the end of the screen, so we're gonna have to tweak a little there. But it all depends on how much you care about the look and feel of these things.
Cool. I think it's going pretty good. I think the main thing that's bumming me out is that the dragon and the penguin are at the same vertical height. So I'm going to move the dragon to be a little lower. Now that's actually just hard-coded right here. There's a 60. I'm just going to try 0 and see how that looks. The dog's trying to help. They're actually kind of almost touching. I think what I might do is I might make my penguin like 80. And so if I run it again now. Cool. All right, now it's even extra confusing because I've got a penguin that I moved up to 80. I've got my starfish, which looks like a penguin, at 60. And then I've got my dragon. And it's going well. It's just like extra confusing. I think what's going to help me the most is to make my starfish look like a starfish. So I'm going to go to my starfish, which looks disturbingly like a penguin. And I'm going to add costumes. And so we'll do a search over here for starfish. Do you like which one? I think happy.
I took the happy one. I took Starfish A.
Happy starfish. And then I've had this thing going on where I move them to make sure they're right in the middle. So that starfish is right in the middle. And then I'll duplicate the starfish. And I'll copy the X over. And the X actually looks about right. So I think that might get lucky here. So now I've got a starfish and a starfish with a very similar color X on it. And I'm going to put my starfish at -80. All right, now I think it's going to start making more sense to me. Starfish is a little big. I'm going to take the starfish and change him from 65 down to, say, 55. And his hand kind of touches his hand, but you know what? So does the dragon, so I'm just going to let it go. If you wanted to... All right, fine, I can't let it go. I'm going to take him down to 50, and the dragon, you were saying that we probably need to make the dragon just a little smaller. We'll make the dragon just a little smaller. Cool. I think that spatially seems good enough. I think I can actually handle it and move on to life. All right, so now we've got our 3 sprites. I kind of want my backdrop back. I'm going to click on my stage, backdrops. I'm going to switch to my galaxy backdrop. Oh yeah, much better. And you can play with the heights and you can do whatever you want. You can see that I did like 80, 0, -80. You don't have to do that. In fact, like I could lower it down some. I could make the starfish negative, I don't know, 120. I'm just kind of guessing with numbers here. If you wanted them lower on the screen, you could do that. That's going to mess with my button, though. I just realized I probably shouldn't do that. How about I just leave it at 80, 0, and -80? Well, whenever you're building a game, you gotta play some. I think that looks fine. I should have never messed with 80, -0, and -80. Great. Things that I like, things that I don't like. I don't like that they only have num penguins. It's kind of behaving weird because they're independent, but it's kind of confusing. I think it would help my confusion if I made 2 more variables. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to, oh, this is kind of interesting. The starfish, you can see he has an X. My dog's driving me nuts over here. The starfish has an X, but it wasn't being shown. And the dragon has an X, but it wasn't being shown. Only the penguin's X was being shown, so I'm going to hide that X. All right, I'm going to make these other variables. I'm going to make, and they're going to be global, so it doesn't matter who you're on when you make them. I'm going to make a num dragons. And then, I just realized my num penguin was singular. I'm going to right-click and rename that to num penguins. And then I'm also going to make a variable for num starfish, which is already plural. And I think that I'm going to move them up just a little bit. Oh, I could actually kind of like space them out this way too. But you can also visually just look at them and see how many there are, right? But it's going to say how many there are that are left. Cool. All right, so I think that looks good. Modify the code to, so penguins want to use penguins. Dragons should be using num dragons. Should be using, so there and there should use num dragons. Num dragons and num dragons. So you can see that there's 2 of them. There's 1 set and 2 usages. Starfish, want to use num starfish. So I'm going to pop that out. Num starfish, num starfish. Okay, I think that I am no longer confused. One thing that is confusing me is that those are starting with X's. Oh, it's because of this. Switch to costume penguin A. Yeah, there is no penguin A. Let's go with dragon C, and let's go with starfish A. Sweet. Awesome. And so when you click them, you should get X's. Now, one thing that we will need to fix is I can click any row and you just kind of get X's. By the way, the nice thing about clones is if you change one thing, you change it for all of them. So it looks like, so my X's on my starfish are a little too small. And so I'm just going to grab that and I'm going to make that X a little bigger. And it just changes it, like you can see this changing it for everybody. I just think that's so cool. All right, so things are going really, really well. We have a layout. You can look at my code if you need to pause it, if your layout doesn't look like mine. It's kind of like there's a lot of tricky things. There's my dragons, there's my starfish. The thing that I want to fix is I want to make it such that if you click on, like if I click on a starfish here, all the other X's get removed. Because you'd be a big cheater, because I mean, if this was the game, then you would just win instantly every time, because you just click on all of them and be like, I win, right? That's great, then you cheated. So what I want to do is I want to actually let other people know that a penguin has been clicked, or a dragon has been clicked, or something like that. So really what I want to do is this. Go to your top row item, so mine's a penguin. If you want to communicate to other people, that's a broadcast. So I'm going to go to events, and I'm going to broadcast a message. I'll put it right up here, why not? You can put it on either side, I think. And so I'm going to broadcast, I'm just going to say, hey, there was a penguin click, just letting you know. And so if there was a penguin click, then that means that on the dragon, if I hear you say penguin click, then I want to reset my costume to the first dragon, which is dragon C. Same with the starfish. If starfish hears news that a penguin was clicked, then he's going to go to switch his costume to Starfish A. All right, let's try this. So I've got some clicks on some dragons. I got some clicks on some starfish. And the moment I click on a penguin, he's going to tell me. So I click on a penguin, and all those others go away. Now, if I click on more penguins, that's fine. There's no reason to make things go away. All right, we need to do that task for all three of them because we've only implemented it for penguins, right? So these guys, when you click a penguin, they'll go away. But not vice versa, right? All right, so let's do it for all of them. So dragons, first off, they need to inform people. They need to broadcast, not penguin click, but they need to broadcast a new message. They need to broadcast dragon click. And then the penguins have to listen for that. And if they hear it, then they need to switch to their first costume. And starfish need to listen for dragon click. And they need to, I'll just duplicate that, stick it right here. So now starfish are very good listeners. So a starfish will go away if I click a dragon. A starfish will also go away if I click a penguin. All right, so getting a little tedious here. My starfish needs to broadcast starfish click. And I'm guessing you know where I'm going to go with this. I'm going to go to the penguin, and he's going to listen for starfish. And then he's going to go to his original costume. Dragons are going to listen for starfish. And they're going to switch to dragons. Okay, I think I've got everybody. Penguins.
I'm going to run an idea by Dave and see if he agrees. For those that have been watching the videos, you may recall there's a different way to refer to the costumes, not just by name, but you can also refer to them, you remember? Pause if you want, by number. And so I'm thinking if we had instead set up costume 1 for all of them was going to be the version without the X, we wouldn't have had to change anything with that. We could just copy that whole thing over, switch to costume 1, would have worked for all 6 instances, I think. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're totally right. Yeah,
Okay.
So no, if we name these better to just like costume 1, and we still could do it with a number, it's just not as easy to do.
Oh, that's what I was wondering, if there was a actual number to slide in.
There's no good way to type a number here. So I mean, this is completely dumb. But you could say like
really
0 plus 1. But I don't know how to just. Oh, you could make a variable.
Switch costume number. No. I think it's switch. I think it's a pull down on that side.
Switch costume.
How did we do it in the other one?
So you can just drop a number in here like this. Like this will work for.
No, I know that'll work. Okay. Well, we're in the weeds, but
yeah, it's okay. No, it's always good to list. So there's the current costume number. You can get that. But to set the costume...
Oh, yeah. It's not actually as easy as I thought it was.
Well, I mean, this isn't terrible, but it's kind of a little terrible.
Yeah, I'm not as big of a fan if it requires that extra layer, but...
Yeah, so
it's good to think about those things and look for them.
Cool. So I think I've got them all. Everybody broadcast, and then you listen for the 2 others. So you should always have a penguin, a dragon, and a starfish. Just a penguin, a dragon, a starfish. Just who you are is the one you broadcast. All right. I actually am really happy with our game so far. We can click. When we switch to a different row, it switches to just be that row. And we've got some good things going. Now it's time to do the next big jump. And the next big jump is a button that switches turns. So we're going to need a button. So we're going to need a new sprite for this. Let's just go look at the solution really quick just to see kind of the idea. So there's a button. And so right now the button's over here. And so you click some things and then you confirm for player 1. And then it changes costumes and it hops over there. And so I click on a couple here, maybe I change my mind, go up to here, and as soon as I click confirm, it does it and it switches sides. So the first thing we need, and this is the fun thing about code, is you always do it in stages. The first thing we need is a sprite that actually says player 1 confirm or something like that, right? So it's you're confirming this is your move, and then it also says player 2 confirm. So it's going to take a little bit of time just to get the initial things going. Oh, by the way, it looks like I still haven't saved mine. I should save this. I'm going to call it NIM. I'm going to call it NIM video just because we're making a video right now. All right, I need a button. So let's go ahead and just click on New Sprite. And I think there's a couple built-in buttons. So you can use one of these built-in buttons if you want. It looks like there's a green one. You can use green. This one looks like it's blue or orange. This one looks like it's gray or blue. And so there's you could use a check mark, right? So you can use like confirm player 1. I think I'm going to go with this rectangular one here. You could also just draw it from scratch entirely. It doesn't really matter, whatever you like to do. So I think that I decided this time I'm going to use this button as like my starting point. All right, and so it's going to either be over here. Oh, it's got 2 costumes already. And so I can just use the 2 costumes if I wanted. And so when it's on one side, it doesn't matter which you do, I'm going to have it say player 1 confirm. So I'm just going to type player 1 confirm. That actually worked out to be fairly centered already. It got a red font, which is fine. If I don't like red, you could go with something different. There you go. All right, and I'm going to make it just a little bigger here because I'm OCD, right? Once you get one of them done, it's probably easiest actually to, you could either copy the text and paste it for the other one, or you could duplicate it. Either way is fine. All right, so I've got 2 different buttons. One is gray, one is blue. I don't know why I did that. You can make it look pretty if you want. They do have names. They're called button 3A and button 3B for me. If you want to switch it, you could switch it to just be like player 1, and you can change the name of this one to like player 2. You don't need to change the names of costumes, but sometimes it can just make your code less confusing, right? All right, so I'm happy about this. What I want to do first is when I click it, I want to switch to the other player's turn, right? That's kind of the idea. So let's jump into the code. All right, so what I want to do is first off, I'm going to need a variable that keeps track of whose turn it is. Technically, I could use the costume number as my variable. That'd be fine, I guess. It'd just be kind of confusing. I think I'm just going to use a variable. I'm going to make a variable for whose turn? Or player turn or something like that. Cool. And I'll eventually hide it because I won't need it, but I'm going to show it right here. So when the game starts, I'd like to randomly set whose turn it is so that it's not always the same player's turn. So I'm going to go to when green flag is clicked. I'm going to go to variables. I'm going to set player turn, and I'm going to set it randomly. So I'm going to pick random between 1 and 2. And so it's whenever I click it, that time it's going to be player 2's first. There's player 1, player 1, player 2, things like that. Great. All right. Now, whenever I change turns, I want to actually set its location and its sprite. So you got to set location and its sprite based on this variable. I'm going to do that right now. Like right now, I'm getting ready to do it. But I also am going to need to do it during the game. So I've coded enough that I can feel that I'm going to do it once now, and then I'm going to do it again later. And as you code enough, you're just going to discover, hey, if I do the same code in 2 different times, that should be what's called a function in normal coding. In Sprite, we call it blocks. So we're going to go ahead and make a block. So go ahead and say my blocks, make a block, and we're just going to call this function update button. So it's going to update what sprite is being shown and where it's being shown at. And so I'm going to make a function out of this. And so here's the fun thing about functions is you can call them as many times as you want. So I'm of course going to call it right here. And I can call it again later if I want as well. And so this update button is just going to have an if statement, an if else, I guess to be more specific. And so if the variable player turn is equal to, so I'm going to need an equals operator. I'm going to need the variable. I'm going kind of quick here, but you can pause me as you need. So if it is player 1, if it's player 1, I want to set the costume to player 1. And I want to set the position to basically right where it's at, because player 1's over here. So I'm going to say go to that number right there. Oh, it's so close to being a nice even number. I'm going to make it a nice even number. And then if it's not player 1, it must be player 2. I'm going to duplicate those two things and go down here. I'm going to switch it to the player 2 costume. And I don't know if this is going to work out for me or not. I'm going to try it. I'm going to try positive 190. All right, so click the button. Ooh, it worked pretty good. Click the button and it's player 2. Click the button and it's player 1. Great. Now this information here, this player turn variable, it's kind of redundant because I've got a pretty good visual here that I can click on. And so I think that I'm going to hide that. So I go to variables and I hide the player turn. We also had a feature in our game, which I think is very wise. When you hit the green flag, it reminds you how the game works. The player who takes the last object wins. I think that was a good message. I think we should do that in our game here as well. So
I needed that reminder, given the different versions when I was explaining the game. So it proved its usefulness.
So we'll just go ahead and type it. What did we write? We said the player who takes the last object wins. Okay, I can type that. The player who takes the last object wins. And you can say it for as long as you feel like you need to read it. So the player who takes the last object wins. Cool. All right. Things are going good. Next, we need to be able to click the button, right? So when we click the button, it should potentially see if the game has been won. So we're going to have to see if the game has been won. If it's been won, we'll say, you win. Good job. Way to go. If it has not been won, then we need to switch whose turn it is, and we need to clear off the X's, right? So that's kind of the goal. So let's go ahead and see if we can do this. So let's go to events. Big day. Take a pause whenever you want to take a pause. I'm just having fun, so I'm going to keep on cruising. When this sprite is clicked, what I want to do is I want to see if the game's been won or not. So I'm going to go to Control, and I'm going to grab another else. If else. Now we've got ourselves a question. How do we know if the game has been won? Well, we know the game has been won if you just took the last piece. And the moment you take the last piece, these things will all be 0. So we haven't actually removed anybody yet, but let's go ahead and just try it. So what we're going to do is we're going to add up all of the things. So I'm going to need to add 3 things together. Oops, that's 4 things. And I'm going to check to see if they are equal to 0. So the 3 things that I need to add up, I need to add up the 3 variables. The number of penguins, plus the number of dragons, plus the number of starfish. If this is all equal to 0, so I'm going to drop it into right there. Whoa, I got more complex than I was expecting real fast. So if that's equal to 0, then I know that I have won the game. And so when you win, you should probably say something. You should probably say, you win. Might be a little while before we get to this. You win. We'll say it for like 3 or 4 seconds. We'll probably come back to that and make it better, but we're just going to leave it right there for now. If the game is still going, then what we want to do is we want to remove things. Actually, we probably ought to remove before before this, but that's okay. What I want to do, if it hasn't been one, I want to switch to the other person's turn. So if it's the other person's turn, so it's actually kind of like this code right here, right? Tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. This I might regret. Put it up here. So I don't need these innards. Here's what I need to do. If it's player one's turn, then I want to set it to player two's turn, and vice versa. If it was one, make it two, and then if it wasn't one, well, then it probably was two, and so you want to set it to one. Then I want to call my update button. I feel like I didn't explain that very well, but that's the beauty of Scratch. You can see the code right here. So I'm going to look at all the code for this button.
I think it was explained well. I mean, you went through it incrementally. The thing that we need to realize on the implementation side is that we had a goal when this button was clicked that we needed to figure out, is the game over?
Yeah.
And so the condition that Dave put in there was to check if these variables that we'd already had from the beginning were at zero. If they summed to zero, that meant that these were that nothing was left on the screen, that we were going to be done. And so that was worth checking. Now, what we're going to have to make sure is that when we click that button, everybody's kind of doing their thing, and these variables are all updating, prior to this check. So I think that we're gonna have to navigate that soon, or maybe just figure out why it takes care of itself. But
let's see if this bottom area works. Now I did put a bug in here. I noticed when Bob was talking. This was a goof. But yeah, so Bob's totally right for what we're gonna do next week. We're gonna have to remove the X's. We haven't done that yet. You might see what my bug is. I accidentally set num dragons to 1. Man, that gets you, right? So what I meant to do there is change the player turn. So all right. So what I'm hoping happens is I'm hoping that whenever I click it, it switches to the other side. Cool. Nobody gets removed yet, but I can go back and forth. I mean, this is an important part of a 2-player game that you can go back and forth. All right. Now we're going to do what Bob was saying. What we're going to need to do is we're going to put X's on people, right? And, the X's are only on one row. And the moment I click this button, click, I need to inform them that it's time for you to go away, right? Is kind of the idea. So I'm going to need to broadcast a message. And also, this is one of those broadcasts where I want to broadcast it, and I want to wait till it's done before I check anything, right? So I'm going to use this event called broadcast and wait. We saw this last time as well. And I'm going to put it right at the top. And so he's going to broadcast to tell people that they need to remove themselves if they're currently an X. And then he's going to let them reduce the variables. And then he's going to check to see if somebody's won. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new message. And you can name messages however you want. But really it's check to see if you should be removed, right? And then you kind of want to say that succinctly. It's like, or maybe you could say in turn, or maybe check for delete. Maybe is what I'll say. So I'm going to broadcast, hey, check for delete. If you're an X, you should probably go away. And then all of these are going to need to listen to it. I'm going to start with the penguin. So I need lots of events. Check out all these events. This is so cool. This code is like getting crazy. So I'm going to need another check for delete. And if I am, so I'm going to go to if statements. If my costume, where's my equals operator? Right there. If my costume number is equal to number 2. Now there's 2 ways you could have done this. I could have checked the costume name, but I'm going to check the costume number because I like numbers because you can always refer to them by their name, which is Penguin A, or this number up here, this 1. Same with this one. I can check penguin A2, or I can just check the number. By checking for the number, this will work the way we wanted, Bob, where I can kind of like reproduce it for everybody. So if that's the case, if I am currently costume number 2, then I want to reduce my variable. So I'm going to change, I'm a penguin, so I'm going to change the number of penguins by -1. And then peace, I'm out, right? So I'm going to go to control, and I'm going to just delete this clone. So he's gone, right? All right, I'm going to want to put this on all the sprites, but I probably ought to test it first. So if I hit the green flag, I can do, so only penguins work, but of these 3, I click on, and then I click on that. Sweet. And then I click on a couple more penguins, and I click on that, and they're gone. By the way, one bug that we are going to have to fix here in a little bit is what happens if I don't click on anybody and I just pass. I just say, no, I don't really feel like playing. I confirm. It does go to the next player. There's 2 ways to fix this problem. One is to tell the other person that's cheating and to not fix it in code. But honestly, I would recommend that you come up with some strategy to fix it in code. And so Bob and I ran into this, and we thought it would be more fun if we fixed it in code. So I'm going to show you how we thought we should fix it in code. Bob, do you remember what our strategy is or is going to be?
So I thought that I don't think we went through and exhaustively checked each costume, which would be one way to do it. I think we may have broadcast a message when we first clicked, or set a variable when we clicked. Variables. If anybody ever received a message that they had been clicked, we set the global variable that something has been clicked, so a turn has actually been initiated. And then if that variable hasn't been set, we know that, hey, we shouldn't actually let you toggle the player.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and add this code. So Bob and I wanted to enforce in code, so we made another variable, basically called "did something get deleted?" Right?
Yes.
Because if nobody got deleted, you didn't really take a turn, right? And so what we did is we set it. Did something get deleted? We set it to 0 initially. Mm-hmm. And then if something did get deleted, then they just would set it to 1. And this whole taking of your turn, we actually just wrapped it inside of an if statement. And so we only do this if and only if did something get deleted is set to a 1. Now this code is kind of funny to look at because...
Do you need that operator? I guess you do because of the shape, huh?
Yeah, because shape. Yep, you got it.
Yeah. So usually I ask that question, everybody, because in coding, oftentimes anything that isn't a 0 is considered a true. And so I thought maybe just the fact that did something get deleted by itself could stand as a true. But in Scratch, we have to check to see if it's actually equal to 1.
Yep. No, very well said. All right. So we're setting it to 0. We're going to broadcast and wait. And then we're going to check to make sure that somebody changed it, right? Because right now we never change it, right? So we will never be able to take a turn. So let's do better than that. So the penguins, if somebody did get deleted, we can set this something got deleted to 1. All right. So right now only penguins can take turns. But let's try it. So I'm gonna click on a penguin or 2. I'm gonna click confirm. And it switched to the other player. I'm going to try to click it with nobody. It didn't work. I'm going to put 1 penguin on, and there it does work. All right, so penguins work because they've got this chunk of code. You'll notice that nobody else has this chunk of code yet, right? So it's only on one of my sprites, so I want to put it everywhere. That's easy. What I do is I just take the little script here, and I drop it on him. And then I also drop it on the starfish. When you drop it on like that, it puts it somewhere random. So here, my dragon, it put it up there. I think the only thing I need to change is I need to change this change the number of dragons by 1. And this one, yeah, put it somewhere random too. And I need to change the number of starfish by -1. Cool. So if I run it now, oh, I don't really need to see that variable. I should be able to get rid of some dragons, or some starfish, or some penguins. And if I start to do dragons and then I switch to penguins, that's fine. But if I try to click it with nothing, it won't let you click it. Cool.
And there was also something, I said that Dave corrected me on, which was fantastic, because I said if something had been clicked. But if Dave goes back and unclicks, I believe, now we're in a position where, the turn started, but then it got undone. And Dave's way of checking to see if something was actually deleted was needed, because if we had only looked for a click, something that had initiated the turn, the player could have cleverly undone that.
Yeah.
And then tried to get around it that way. So Dave thought ahead a step and reminded us when, you actually have to delete something.
Cool. And so I'm going to try to win this game. So if I take these 3.
Do it.
And then click that, you win. Cool.
Congratulations.
It was sudden. It almost came out of nowhere. We just finished. What, seriously? But I mean, if you think about it, we're out of features. And so we can click on a bunch of penguins. We can click on, I'm going to get all the starfish. We can click on a bunch more penguins. Oh, I'm going to leave 1. And then this person is going to very cleverly leave only 2. Good luck to you, sir. And then I get the last one, and I win. Pretty cool. Wow, that finish came out of nowhere on me, Bob. But I loved it.
You had some thought in the back of your mind that more was going to need to be done?
I don't know. I was so focused on doing a little bit at a time that it took me off guard, because I was just worried about the next thing. It's like I was worried about what was right in front of me, worried about what was right in front of me, and then all of a sudden I was standing at the finish line.
Standing at the finish line. That's how coding works so often. I'm sure some of the people that are watching were just also wondering what else is next. We'll just do what's next on the video and see what happens. And then eventually you run out of things to fix. Oftentimes when you're doing coding, you'll think of a few things. You might want to have a little piece of paper nearby or some way to take notes. And, if you're writing code, you're like, oh, I got to remember to take care of this thing. Oh, I thought of this little inconsistency. Oh, we got to make sure we check for a win later. And so you have this list. Dave has been doing this long enough where most of those things are in a list in his head. But at the beginning, when you're doing coding, and even now for more complicated programs, I'm sure Dave has a method to track all those things that you can't write right now, but you want to make sure you write later. So as you develop your own code, you may run into those same things. Oh, I want to change the costume later, or change the way this is positioned.
Cool. Super fun. All right, we'll make a couple comments here at the end, and then we'll wrap this thing up. So our goals were to do some things with math. So we did some early things with math and evenly spacing. We did a bunch with clones and broadcast. We snuck in a custom function, and then this something was deleted. Is what's called input validation. That's kind of a fancy word, but we decided to throw it in there. So big picture of things from today, breaking things up into smaller problems and then just tackling them one chunk at a time. It's huge. And so it's so fun to use this approach. Bob, you want to say anything in kind of closing our mindsets on this app or the whole camp?
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for watching. It was a lot of fun to make these videos. I think at the beginning of this video, you heard me say a fun-filled, fantastic... It was filled. It was very filled Friday if you're watching these in day sequence. This is a doozy, but at the end, we created 5 really fun games. I know some of these you can just play with your hands or play on paper. You don't necessarily need a program for, but hopefully it spawned ideas to other games that you could make. And, we really hope that you, if you weren't already in love with coding, that you fell in love with coding watching our videos.
Cool. Yeah, can't do it enough. Love when people get to do things that are fun. keep in mind this is something you could do for the rest of your life if you wanted, right? These are skills that are useful to the world. It's something fun that you could do, and you can definitely keep on the coding path for a very long time. So, big thanks to everybody that joined us, all the students that are learning, and all the parents and other students that are helping to teach. Really fun to be a part of this program. All right.
Thanks, everybody.
We'll look forward to seeing you next year. Bye.